All right, we're starting the journey of putting a 3-inch drop axle in a 1952 Chevy truck. We've already got the rear forelinked. I've got a previous video on this already. We're pretty content about the front end being pretty low, but we're gonna go ahead and put a drop axle in her, all new kingpins, all the new hardware, and get this thing really on the ground where my buddy would like it. Right now it's kind of jacked up on the lift, and the airbags are also pushed up. So long story short, let's get this going. All right, next step, we are back in here. Basically, you're gonna want to take apart probably the brake line, pop these two lids off for these caps and whatnot. Hold on, let me change that angle. Take that off. There's a pin that goes from there to there called the kingpin, and hopefully this one ain't too stuck. We're gonna try to get it out right after we drop the whole assembly on the ground. Our best bet, get it down on the ground where we can work with it, strip off these spindles, all the steering stuff, everything's got to come off, and we'll go from there. We're going to be rebolting. Basically, leave your springs on, unbolt them at your U-bolts, both sides. Don't mind these spacers. I know they're a little funky, but it's what we had at the time. I'll be changing them out, getting shorter U-bolts that fit it correctly. But that's the sum of the story. Bear with me. I'm going to tear into this and get the next few pieces torn off. All right. We're starting right here at all the steering stuff. These are 3/4 nuts. I'm pretty sure this is an original front end. I know the rear end was not, but I'm pretty sure this one was. All 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But just do these bottom 2 to the drag link on this, and do the bottom 2 on this side as well. And then there's also 2 more. This piece right here was simply to protect from when this bar goes by it, not to tear a hole in the airbag. Well, that's not factory. But there you go. So we're going to do all 4 on this side eventually. Just the bottom 2 on each side for now. And next step, we're going to do these brake lines. I'm going to just break them right here. Let me get a better picture. Anyway, just inside of that. Right there. And then same thing on this side. Other than this side's exposed, you can see it. I'm trying to get some light in there. There you go. Don't have the sizes on me right now. We'll find out in a minute. That way these spindles can come down. I might just use my forklift and drop the whole thing. Or my transmission jack, which is a taller one, a 3-tier. So bear with me. We'll get it. All right. Now that we are back on her, I'm going to try to take some weight off it. Remove the adapters, maybe the drums if they'll come loose. We pulled all 4 lower nuts, 2 off this side and the 2 off this side. Everything came okay. They did have cotter pins buried in the rust. We removed our little safety plate to clear us of the steering shaft. Basically, the steering's ready to drop. And we just pulled our brake lines, 5/8 big end, 3/8 small tube end off the metal end. They go through there, and then 5/8 a big one, 3/8 on that little guy up there for the metal end. We'll keep on pushing. We're going to pull these off, see if the drums will come off, remove a little weight, and then get ready to pop our U-bolts and drop the whole thing. All right. We just simply popped our equipment off right here and here. Those 2 bolts, couple smacks with a hammer, came right off. I always tend to use a little torch sometimes. Heat works well on getting old stuff like this apart. So we're going to pop this one off next. But this one I'm going to swing up and over and just simply leave it out of the way. Maybe set it on top of the bar for the lift. And we should be good. I'll keep trying to make step by step for you guys. Recently had a guy got to tell me my video was crap. I was like, kind of argued with him, but long story short, I got to wear the next man's shoes too. I'm not always right. I just, man, I've always learned as I've done it. So bear with me. Not everything comes with instructions. Alright, as I anticipated actually, I've got all four broke loose and kind of just simply pushed through. Tops and bottoms, everything's kind of rusted up, keep in mind. But long story short, you have to pull that cap, the main nut, the bearings behind it, get this whole hub assembly out of there. Two, and why we're doing it, to get the backing plate moved out enough where this kingpin can slide up or down. We got a possibility of going up though. I'm going to try that before I break this whole thing off. And either way I go, I'll tape it for you. Alright, now that we're back at it, yes, as I suspected, we did pop all four of these loose. The trick to these kingpins is heat. This is the locking pin for them. So we're going to try popping that. Even if I got enough room to go up and out through the top. If not, we will have to disassemble the whole bearing setup and everything else. But we're going to try doing it without that. Everything's pretty loose. So she's got to be pretty worn out, and hopefully it'll pop out like it's worn out. Sometimes that makes funny noises. Alright, we popped our bolt right there. We should follow it right out the back side. Right there, it's slowly coming out. And that'll pop all the way out. And that should free our kingpin. And we're going to go up with it, hopefully. Not too much heat. Alright, in my world, everything tends to go the worst way. This thing is stuck. So I need to just royally torch it. I'm going to use my little guy over there to press, pull him out. And so, long story short, pull your king nut off here, castle nut. And then behind it, set of bearings, pull that out. And then behind that, after you pull this hub assembly out, there'll be another set of bearings and a seal on the back side. So, pull that off. I'd hold the camera, but man, I haven't been able to buy a third arm yet. So, when I get one, I'll be videoing this while I do it. But let me go ahead and pop this apart, and I'll show you what we got inside. Alright, we did just pop it all apart. That's what you see. And on the floor, I put them how they come off. These four bolts are ready to pop out now. This is the passenger side. We can get everything loose off there. Get some of the weight down so I can pull the whole thing. On the floor here, castle nut, washer, race. Those are bearings. They don't look like it. And then this goes like this with all that on the outside, inside of this piece. On the back side, then we got a backside race and kind of a seal dust cover. Now all this, everybody's got a different way of doing it, but simply I brake clean the heck out of it. I blow it out with air. I like using marine grease on stuff like this. It lasts a little longer, does a little better job. Check your races and bearings for damage. Make sure that they aren't all scarred up, messed up, or they'll wear right out. Well, there that is. We're going to go ahead and get this backing plate and the whole assembly to pop off now. And then we'll have plenty of room to heat that up with a torch. And hopefully not have to use the press to get it out. I've whacked on it a couple times already with the locking pin, which is a shim style. The tighter it gets, the more it shims it. But yeah, she's in there good. Bear with me. Alright, we now have both sides apart. Don't like that rust in the middle of both on the spindles. Same deal on this side. Everything's already in pieces. Loose both sides. Definitely significant damage. Don't know why all that's done, but basically I'm going to sand that flat again, top and bottom. Somebody probably beat the hell out of this back in the day. Same deal, grease, or we don't want that on there too. I'm going to smooth that with my little die grinder with the Brillo. These little pads work really good without removing metal, as long as you don't cut too deep and you got the right pad. Now, pay attention to this. There's an angle on this old one and on the new one. And the spindle has an angle as well, but beware. That does have an angle forward. So when you put this all back together, here's our new one. And if you look at it, you can definitely distinguish that it is twisted. See how this one actually angles a little bit. So we got that figured out. I'll show you when I put it in how it turns out. All right, we got her yanked out. Dropped it with my little stands here because I'm working by myself. Everything's sitting there okay. We simply just prop that up for now. Leave everything together we can because we got enough work on this alone. Okay, we're going to clean the tops, which is badly beat up on these. And we're going to do the bottom as well. And I kind of wonder if they did that to hold it in or something. Kind of a weird scenario, but hey, you don't know who worked on this before you. So everyone's different. I'll keep on trucking. All right. We were able to press the pins out using a press and a small stool to set the rest of the axle on. We pressed them in the original, like I said. This is upside down right now. These ears actually go up. So the pins go upward to come out. There's our old pins. Does have caps, which we had to remove. And once I got it started, I was able to use a punch and a heavier hammer and just simply tap it out. I actually didn't end up using heat. They were pretty worn out. But yeah, if you got a press available or a buddy with a press, you better give that guy a beer. Woo! Well, bear with me. We're going to go ahead and start working everything in the front one after I get all these little components cleaned up, painted. And I just don't like putting back together dirty stuff. Sorry, guys. All right, now that we're back in here, you noticed a slight edge in there. There's actually a race in there, or bushing, that goes around these. Now, normally, you would knock that out, but it is on the actual spindles itself on this model. So basically, we're going to have to knock that sleeve out, and it looks like our outer side's damaged. Looks like somebody beat it in with an air hammer last time, possibly. So I have a better tactic of bringing him inward towards the center. Basically, bring it this way, and then this one will bring in too. And those should both pop out pretty, or relatively easy. Next thing, with the kit that we got and the drop axle, they came with brand new ones. So we need to put those on the spindle itself. Here's our new pins, new shims, and those got on the bottom side of that spindle when assembling. And now these, you'll notice, are flat. The tighter you go, there you go. The tighter you go, the snugger they get, and they've got to be against that flat spot. So once you get this assembled, you can kind of look through the hole for the mounting bracket of it, and you can see that that's flat. As long as you get halfway straight, it'll line itself up the rest of the way. And this has two of them, so it's probably set up for multiple vehicles. One of these is going to fit it right, and one of them's not. Other than that, pretty simple. Bear with me. Alright, we got lucky on this one. I found a socket that overlapped the race and fit in the hole. And I like tapping inward. Boom. There you go. She came out pretty easy. We're going to try the other side. Go the same thing. And I got my foot kind of resting on there. And we're going to try that again. One other thing I want you to notice. When assembling, actually tap this one really lightly and it went in. Now on these, see that little hole right there? See that zerk? Okay. If you look at it, height-wise, that lines up with the zerk. So try to square it up with that zerk when you put it in the hole. As long as you're close, it'll go down this little pathway. But rule of thumb, get it close to that hole as possible, if not dead on. Alright. Trying to include some information for you on this kingpin kit. This is separate, but needed when you do this. So there's a part number. And basically everything on the instructions, which I don't even bother using them half the time unless I need them. You can see how everything sets up. Everything lines up, all the pieces. And go ahead, just match up what you see here. And or you'll figure it out. Oh, there you go. I'm getting one side worked out now, and I'll go ahead and videotape some more. All right, we've generally got the first side together, nice and free. Our bushings are inside. Sorry about the grease, and why it's green is that's marine grease. It's my preference, may not be someone else's. I'm just saying it's mine. You don't have to use what I suggest, but good idea. We've got our kingpin in, and like I said, keep in mind you've got two flat spots. One's higher than the other. See, let me wipe this back off so you can see. Make sure this is clean before you shove it in, by the way. Got a lot of wood dust in here right now, unfortunately. But there's the flat spot there. If you look, they're offset just a little bit. Now, if you just basically pull a common sense move and line that up, one side's going to line up opposed to the other side, which this side will actually line up. That one won't. But anyway, it goes like this. Basically, what I suggest is make a little Sharpie mark on the side you want to use, just right on the top or the bottom. I used a couple shims. I found my shim system that would work. And I shimmed it top and bottom. These ones right here, these little bushings, when you think about it, the grease comes from the upper side here. So if you put it this way, it actually forces the grease out those grooves. It can actually grease it like it's supposed to. One on top, one on bottom, and I still had to use one of these real thin little guys opposed to that little thicker guy. So keep in mind, not crazy tight, but you definitely want it good and snug. And we're going to go ahead and pop this side together now too. But also on those little flat spots of this guy right here, the kingpin, this right also has a flat spot. This flat spot needs to be against the flat spot on the kingpin during the assembly of that. Therefore, if it's not, it won't stay in place. The purpose of these right here are the caps. These ensure that those bushings stay in place. Now, these ones are pretty beat up, so I'm probably going to have to simply maybe barely grind the edge of this before it will actually fit in there, because this one's pretty beat up. Normally, you wouldn't have to do this, but every occasion is different. Every vehicle is different. So that's all part of fabrication. Be prepared for a little bit. Hopefully yours wasn't as bad as mine. I'll go ahead and get this going, and we'll continue on with the video. Alright, we are going to try to catch this single-handedly. Like I said before, I wish I had an extra arm. Okay, now this simply, let's scoot this all over so you can watch how I do this. Let me make sure that this is in place. Bear with me. Okay, looking good. Okay, I did slide the old bushings out. I used a socket and simply tap them in from the outsides, inward and inward. Okay, this is the new bushing, and like I showed before, that hole, line up to the inside of that zerk if possible. Flush from the inners. Same deal. This right here does not go like that because it wouldn't line up with the zerk. Therefore there, if you put it up here, it'll never get the grease. So, line up the hole. This one's a little tighter. So what we can do, flip that over. Let's push this one out for just a quick second. And what I'm going to do, try to tap that in real lightly with a punch. These are a little softer, so you want to be very gentle. Don't really want to scar them too much. If you take the same socket, you run her through there. Let's see if we can't evenly beat this in. And boom, there you go. And that socket keeps it nice and flat. Like I said before, flush on the inner side. Flip it over. Same deal. Line that up on the Zerk side. Not all of them go this easy, so trust me, this one is actually relatively easy on this one. That one's good. The next thing's next. We are going to want to line all this up on that piece. So I'm going to put this, and these go one way, which this would go this way, being the axle's upside down. So we're going to set that over there for a second. What I need to figure out is which side, this side, the lower, or this side, the higher, and that flat side has to stay up against this pin, flat side, like that will be the final conclusion of it, and it stops right there when it's tight. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what I'm up to next. Okay, let me back this off. Okay, so I've lined this flat side up to line up exactly with this side of this hole. I've already put this, test fitted it in place about the shimming distance as well. The bushings are in, top and bottom, Zerks are lined up, whatnot, everything's ready to go. I am going to want to use this side and not this side. So I'm going to simply make a mark up here on the top so this is exposed the whole time. And we know exactly where we're at. So bear with me. Just simple little stupid mark I put on. Lines us up with the flat side that I'm looking for the right fit. Bear with me. We'll put that in now. Alright, now that we're back at it, this baby is in there. About an 1/8 inch inside of that. If you look through there, that's just the grease, but that's the flat spot right there, but that's the grease. So now, see the flat spot on this side? This is going to ride just like that. And this is going to come through the hole from the back side where nothing but the threads are showing on that. Like that one right there. And now we're going to lightly tap everything in place, and then we'll do the caps last. And you can do all this with it on the vehicle if you were concerned about that. You can do it either way. I pulled it out. I just like to be able to use my press to push stuff if necessary. This one actually went generally easy, so that's why I did it on the ground, fellas. Jack stands are always your friend. Hi. Bear with me. Okay, now that we're back at it, we did clean the spindles with the die grinder. We got our caps on bottom and top. Everything fit. Do grease the Zerks. Grease them heavily till stuff comes out the sides. I could be gross about that, but I'm going to leave that alone. Okay, only other thing. There is a dowel pin inside the center of this on both sides. Let me see if I can lower this a little bit so you can see. Okay, well, anyway, that pin is like right in the center. You can't miss it. And I simply use these little stands, put a little pressure on her. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure I can get the steering rod back over this thing in the correct position. I'll show you in just a minute. Our next step, we'll be putting our U-bolts back in the front and the back with all our little spacer pieces. And then, now these turn nice and freely, as they should. So we're looking great, fellas. I am going to clean the heck out of these. Get all that old crusty 57-year-old grease out of there with brake clean. And then I'm going to use a grease packer, or you can do it by hand, and simply just pack that grease all up in there. Use brand new grease, no dirt chunks. Keep it as clean as possible. And then we can start putting those back on as well. The backing plates with the brake assemblies go on first. Those will be going right to these. Put them all back together the same way you pulled them apart, and everything will be kosher. So bear with me. we're going to get all that handled. And this thing should be pretty well set the way we're doing her. All right. So, I'm going to tell you this about aftermarket parts. Look at the angle of the U-bolts. It's kind of a no-no with the angle of that one. I mean, it'd probably be okay. But what I'm going to do to correct this, I can't really move it back and forth because it's got that dowel in the middle. So, the only way I could correctly fix this is take this U-bolt back out and drill our hole, offset it, or oblong it just a hair in. And both sides are actually like that. So, that's aftermarket for you. There you go. Other than that, everything else is pretty kosher. Well, bear with me. I'm going to go ahead and start working on these other parts. Get the steering rod up and over this first because there's not much room. So let's make that happen. And the only other problem we might encounter, which isn't going to be on every one, but these airbags, I really didn't have many places to put those as far as the setting. Frame changes right there and right there. So this isn't really part of the video, but if this is what you've done to yours, this might help you out. So bear with me. All right, as we continue, we're getting ready to line this all up, start putting it on. This is called the backing plate. Now, I just simply paid attention to the way these shims are because they're different. The two bottom are longer, the two top are shorter. Top side has the brake line and the main nut for the linkages and all that stuff. So anyway, long story short, let's go ahead and mount this up. Simply going to push it back on the way it came off, and we'll just continue on. All right, we pushed it through all the holes. Everything lined up nice and smooth. And that's the way you can tell if it's greased too, if it pushes it out between the shims and washers and up tops and whatnot. Anyway, everything looks great to me. Do keep in mind, this steering shaft has to go on before you put the nuts on the bottom on both sides. So we'll go ahead and get this all reassembled. You can get to all 4 bolts before you put the spindle assembly on, or not the spindle, but the bearing hub assembly on. I did clean up all this with a Brillo just to get rust off. I didn't use sandpaper because you don't want sand in there, first of all. Second of all, a Brillo pad doesn't eat away the metal as bad. It just lightly scuffs it. Alright, back on her. You know, in this kit it didn't really include, but we are going to have to fix a few things. First off, those U-bolts, the angle, we got to move them holes in so we can square that up a little bit. On another problem, you got to bolt this up on the back. What I'm encountering here is we're hitting the spring. We got a couple options. I'm almost thinking about cutting these right here, which I would want to definitely pull a measurement from this tie rod end to the opposite side and get a perfect measurement. I've got from tie rod end to tie rod end already measured on this thing, and that is definitely going to be in the way. Now these airbags are kind of a circumstance too for a second piece of the steering as well. Same deal, both sides will have to go up about 1 inch to actually mount up because they're hitting the spring on both sides equally. So either I would revert that, but it is not built that way. I could cut and weld the tips and basically flop this over to the bottom side, and then we'd be good. With consideration of it moving left or right, we still got enough room. But I'm debating, I'm going to think for the night, if I'm going to cut this rod and simply angle these tie rod ends down just a little bit and put a new bar, straight tube, one piece from this side to the other, and just have these tie rod ends at a slight angle. Or I can clip the ends. But this is a problem too. This thing's going to be hitting the airbag now. Man, I really hate doing this. Either I can get this thing really red hot and bend it. I need to go up and in about 2 inches. We got enough clearance here, even with the steering of it, that I've got some room. That's going to have to be tended to as well. This is a custom build and custom things. So, Bear with me. I'll continue on. I'm going to think for the night of exactly how I'd like to do this. Strength-wise, every system has to have a weak point as well. But I don't want them driving down the road and the steering taking off left or right either. So it's got to be right. It's got to work proper. Well, bear with me overnight. We'll get back on it, gentlemen. All right. Come to my conclusion. We're getting all our lower hardware bolted up on the spindle itself. Getting ready to tighten them up. Put pins back through. Cotter keys. These are set up for them. Sorry about the light. Let there be light! As you can see, this is cut off the end. What I'm thinking about is that piece came right off the end and the joint pointed upward. We are flipping this so it points downward. Generally don't like doing stuff like this, but in this occurrence, we're going to make it work. So then it'll be right below the bar. Everything will work like it's supposed to. And one other thing I thought about last night is try to keep those straight. If you get any kind of stress on one wheel, it's going to bend that. Therefore, I thought about it. I think I'd rather do it that way. And then my conclusion on this also, this is going to hit the airbag when this steers. It's going forward and back. It's going to rip that right out. I've had that happen before. So we're going to do something kind of similar on that. I need to shorten this up about 1 inch and bring it up about 1 inch, and I think we'll be totally clear. But do keep in mind when this sandwich is out, it gets a little bit wider. So I'll get to that part in a minute. Let's work with this tie rod end up, drag link, whatever you want to call her. I'm going to get that all set up, and we'll go from there. All right, now that we've accomplished something, getting somewhere, got both sides cut, ready to weld these inverted, pointed down, as I showed a second ago. Well, keep that rod straight. That's a better idea. Can't really put a gusset in there. Next thing's next. I'm going to clean out this whole hub assembly, all the old grease and everything. Ugh. We're going to redo all that. Actually, they make an upgraded bearing for that. I don't know if we're going to end up getting those today or not. But anyway, all beside that, we're going to clean it out. Brake clean royal. Get yourself some rags, bucket, whatever you want to use. Clean that all out. Don't drop no pieces. Clean out the front side bearing, the back hub bearing. Make sure your seals and races and everything look okay if you're going to do this the same way. Other than that, you're going to get to it, clean it up, re-grease it now. And I'm not going to have my phone out for all that. A little too expensive to keep breaking these darn things. Alright, now that we're back in here, I got everything cleaned up, whatnot. Brake cleaned the hell out of it. Blew it out with air, then brake cleaned it and blew it out again. Wiped it down with a rag. I'm pretty comfy with this. Now how this goes together, this goes against the spindle in this direction. This is kind of like the old school seal. But this will go on after it. The race goes inwards towards the bearing that slides in there. And basically this would be riding on there. And this whole assembly goes like that. And this is the passenger side front. So we're going to put that all together. But before I pop that in, gonna make sure we got nothing, no debris, no crap in there. But I'm gonna also grease the heck out of this thing. Just plunge it in, rotate that around, get the grease all up in there. Hopefully it'll get any nasty stuff left behind out of the mix. So bear with me and I'll show you how all that goes. And then after the backside assembly is set up, then we work on the front, which would be the bearing. Goes in like this. Not like this, into the race. Behind this bearing will go this little guy right here, and this will go in this direction right on top. We're going to clean that piece up too. And then behind all that is this washer with the one little nipple, which lines up, I believe, upward on the spindle. It only goes on one way. And then you got your kingpin nut, or not kingpin, but anyway, the nut with the little cotter pin that goes through it. Put that in. It doesn't have to be reefed down, just barely more than, like, not even quite snug, just where it's got no play. Real soft. And then just make sure you grease the heck out of it. Pack it full, so full that it's oozing out both sides is always the best way you could do it. So bear with me, we're going to do all that, put it together, and then I'll show you a picture But this is one greasy mess, so I'm putting down my phone. Alright, now that we got the hub on, kind of got to hold it up with one hand, put a bearing in first, then the inner race that goes on the shaft or the spindle piece, and then the castle nut behind the washer. The washer holds everything on, and like I said, it's the lightest little wrench to that, just enough to pull the slack out of it. You don't want that reef down, it'll wear your bearings out real quick. That's what she looks like. Bearing, inner race, washer, castle nut, and a new cotter pin at the end. It's through there, it's just dirty. So we'll pop that out, put that in, and I plan on doing exactly the same thing to the other side. And I literally got that whole hub packed full of grease where it's pushing up both sides. That's the best way I can recommend doing these. Get them nice and lubed up, keep them good for a long time. I myself prefer marine grease because I know it'll take more and the moisture won't hit it as hard. It's just better grease in my aspect. But there you go, we're gonna keep on going. And if I had a third arm, maybe somebody will get one for Christmas. I'll be videotaping and working at the same time. Thanks for watching. Bear with me for a second more. We'll get some more work done here. Alright, the last piece is simple. We put some grease inside of that cap, and basically we're going to go ahead and put our drum on. I normally put new drums on, but this is okay. This one actually ain't horrible. It looks a little bad rustiness wise, but basically you're ready for your wheel. I myself am going to wait on my wheel until I have to get everything welded up. That way I got a little space to work. And then about the only thing left really is set that bracket up to the other side, drag link, and then mount your brake line, put your clip on, and connect your inner metal line to the hard rubber line. But there you go, one side, and I'll go over it again on the other anyway, so bear with me a second, and I got you. Alright, I'll hop back under the truck and show you how we ended up doing the steering. And also all the connections down below. This is what it looks like with the 3-inch drop front end installed. This has airbags on it, but let me back up a little bit here. There you go. Thing sits nice and low. We like it. All right, here we go, final. And it turned out good, nice and low. And what I did inside, which I'm gonna actually end up gusseting right there, the steering rod. This old school still is weldable though, unlike the forged cast stuff. And why I had to do that is see how close that airbag actually is. That's why. This 52 truck has a really difficult setup for putting lowering any of that on. But honestly, let me back this up. We're really happy with how that turned out. Looking good, my dudes. Ass end squatted, front end looking great. She's nice and level, and I'd say about 4 inches off the ground all the way around. There you go. Thanks for watching.